Do you want to learn how to draw a realistic candy illustration with colored pencil? Follow along with me and I will teach you my steps. If I want to grid this out, I am just going to divide this in half. So basically for this candy project, we are trying to create a realistic drawing of a piece of candy that has some sort of significance or meaning to you. If you go to my website, jordanswain.com, and you click on the art classes page, you can search for the candy assignment, and there are some worksheets that you can do. One of them is a brainstorming sheet, and it has all types of candies in it. So think of things that like maybe you enjoyed when you were a little kid, or something that your parents gave you, or a special candy that you had at a holiday. And that's a really great place to start. Also, I like to generate candy with, first of all, pictures. I want to have reference pictures. So taking your own reference photos is always best. You can also find the Creative Commons reference photos that you're allowed to use for artwork. If you're a student, you can use anything for practice as long as you're not selling it. If you plan to sell this project, then you want to use your own original photos. I also used, a couple of times I've used, this is like a good use of AI. I generally don't use AI, but just to generate general candies, like if you're trying to make a gumdrop or a gummy bear, you can kind of generate some reference photos with AI, and I like to use Adobe Firefly because it is probably the best for that type of thing. Okay, so you get a picture, right? I've got peppermints, and I printed them out, and I actually folded this to make it a perfect square. You want to make it a square, and make this a square. And if you've gridded something out before, it's like a lot of math. It's like, how big is this and how big is this? But honestly, if you just do a square and you divide this square in half, you divide this square in half. So I divided this into 4 squares across and 4 squares down. Same with this one on the paper, and that is how I did the gridding. And I'm gonna show you how I did that on my paper as I draw, and I'm gonna speed it up a little bit, but I will narrate through the video. So I've got my paper. This is 5 inches. This is 8 by 8 inches, and I'm not gonna necessarily do any kind of math to grid it out, but I am gonna just divide this in half. So 2.5 inches, 2.5 inches, and I'm gonna use my ruler. Just gonna mark this at the top so it's nice and straight. Dividing that in half, dividing this in half as well, and dividing these in half to make my layout for my peppermints. So again, if I want to divide this in half, let's see, so it is 2.5 inches, so that would be 1 1/4, and 1 1/4. Make sure to line your lines up so that your lines are super straight. And I'm going to grid this out, 1 1/4, and 1 1/4. So I'm going to do that. Try to keep these lines nice and straight. But honestly, with candy, it could be a little bit off and nobody would know. Okay, so I've got my grid. I'm just gonna do 1 2 3 4, A, B, C, D. Sometimes it's easy to get these mixed up. All right, I'm gonna start my layout. 1 2 3 4, A, B, C, D. And I am gonna start laying out these peppermints. So I will put this, I'll start with the middle peppermint. This guy just goes right over. I kind of tend to go by the corners, and I just follow where the corners are. That guy. And these are gonna be, I'm gonna keep this very, very light, so light. Kind of goes like that. This one's going to go off the page a little bit. This one also has a little bit of a shadow. I'm going to go under there, and this is like the middle of my swirls. I'll add the swirls later. And this is almost this whole way. This one kind of comes down. These are like pucks, so they're not circles. I'm gonna make this one kind of comes like that. And there's another one under here. This one comes down there, and then there's another one right here. So this guy is, and this goes off the page just a little bit. Sometimes things are bigger than you think they're gonna be when you're gridding, but just follow the grid lines. Now with the peppermint swirls, I'm just kind of laying this out. It doesn't have to be exact. Like, you don't necessarily have to draw every swirl, but you want to get the basic shape. Because I don't want to have to erase all of these pencil marks, but basically these swirls kind of come, and then there's this ridge right here. So you're getting this down like that. Like that. And they get wider. And you can make them more perfect than they actually look, because these are real candy. They're gonna have some flaws. So I'm just gonna super speed while I do this. Okay, finally the drawing is done and we're ready for colored pencils. These are the colors I'm using, and I'm actually going to show you a quick screenshot of all the colors that I'm using so that if you want to copy this exactly, you can, but you can use any colors that you want to. And now it's time to erase all of that hard work. I am just erasing it softly as I start adding the colored pencil. And one thing to know, and you can just watch me do this, but one thing to know about these peppermints is you think that they're just red and white, right? But they're not. They have so many other colors in them. I'm actually using a pink, a maroon, an orangey red. I'm using a blue for the shadows. I'm using a cream for the sides of the peppermint. So if you look closely at the picture and you really think, what other colors can I use to make my candy look more exciting? And it's okay if you want to exaggerate a little bit in your colors, or if you want to add in a color that maybe you don't see but you think would make your drawing more interesting. That is totally fine. Another trick is to use those complementary colors for your shadows. So if I am making a red peppermint, maybe I want to use a little bit of a green to add some shadows. I actually used a blue to add shadows because I thought the red and blue complemented each other pretty well and made it a little bit more interesting. It just kind of makes the red pop. And what I'm doing is I'm just softly shading with my colored pencil little by little, and I'm going in there. I can always add more color, but I cannot erase these Prismacolor colored pencils. So I'm taking really careful care to think about, where do I see my light spots? Where do I see my shiny parts on my candy? Candy has a lot of shiny parts, so you want to really think about that. And I'm getting in there with my blue, I'm getting in there with my cream, and I'm really trying to layer. And as I'm layering and I add more and more, I can start to burnish. And burnishing is when you add so much colored pencil that you can't add any more. So it fills in those little divots in the paper. And I'm just keeping on burnishing. And now I'm going to add my background. And you do not have to add a background, but I decided it needed something. And so I added a blue and a green. And this part took a little bit of time. And honestly, a lot of people wonder, like, why can't I get this perfectly smooth? I was kind of being fast on this project because I was doing it with students and I wanted to show an example. So you can really take your time and make tiny little circles with your colored pencil to make it as smooth as possible, or you can just embrace the texture and go with it. And either way is fine, but do whatever you do, just be deliberate and take your time and have fun with it. So just adding more and more texture. A lot of times when you think you're done, you're not. You need to look at every square inch of your picture and say, is this really how I want it to look? Can I make it any better? Keep improving and have a great time making your candy. If you're thinking about subscribing, please subscribe to my channel. It helps me to create more content. And this may sound crazy, but my goal is to get 10,000 subscribers. So help me out with that. And visit my website, jordanswain.com, for free worksheets, tutorials, and resources for teachers.